The Galactic Tournament. Thousands of starships of every shape and size descended upon the ancient space station, Silos Prime, jockeying for docking positions. The cavernous hangars soon filled with vessels from 100 alien worlds. It was time once again for the grandest spectacle in the known universe, the event that enthralled countless trillions of sapient beings, the Galactic War Games. Only once per decade did the most powerful spacefaring civilizations gather to compete in this esteemed tournament, each vying to showcase their strategic prowess, martial skill, and technological might. Amidst the bustle of tentacles, proboscises, and ambulatory appendages of a million hues, strode two humans in crisp blue uniform, Commander Jake Wildcard Savage and his first officer, Jessica Phoenix Drake. The entire space station seemed to pause for a heartbeat, gawking at the fleshy bipeds in their midst. While humanity had made their presence known in the galactic scene for several decades now, this marked the first time they had been invited to compete in the illustrious War Games. As the newest associate members of the Galactic Alliance, Earth had finally earned a position in the tournament, but the other starfaring powers remained deeply skeptical. "They are so soft and squishy," muttered a gelatinous Sci-Fi as the human pair passed by. "What good are they without armored scales or regenerative ichor? I hear their ships still use primitive chemical rockets," buzzed a chitinous Kazakh warrior. "Ugly, inefficient, and explosive. How quaint." Savage and Drake stoically ignored the susurrus of alienating comments, well used to such rhetoric. They strode into the grand atrium where the pre-tournament ceremonies were getting underway. An obscenely tentacled master of ceremonies undulated to the central podium. "Welcome, esteemed sentients, to the 374th Galactic War Games. We have an exciting lineup of civilizations competing in this decade's tournament, each one bringing their unique capabilities to the table. Reigning supreme as the ultimate champions for the last 4 tournaments, we have the indomitable Zorgax Imperium." The crowd erupted into cheers as a cadre of hulking, spiky Zorgax warriors stomped forward, bearing aloft fluttering banners festooned with the gory skulls of their vanquished foes. The MC continued introducing the other contenders, each alien delegation preening or posturing as they were named, reveling in the tournament's pomp and circumstance. And finally, joining us for the first time, the newcomers from Terra, the Human Expeditionary Force. A smattering of tepid applause and a few guttural chortles greeted Savage, Drake, and their team as they stepped forward. Several aliens murmured wagers on how quickly the fragile humans would be eliminated from the games. "Terrans," the MC said, "your species is by far the most junior to compete in these time-honored games, and some would say you are out of your league. What would you say to those who question humanity's readiness to face the Galactic Alliance's greatest military powers?" Savage stepped forward, spine straight and eyes glinting with fierce determination behind his pressure helmet's visor. "We may be new to the galactic stage," he declared, the atrium's translator sending his words to the varied auditory receptors of those assembled, "but never underestimate humanity's grit, daring, and sheer stubborn persistence. We'll prove our worth through our actions, not posturing." The human commander's bold words were met with scattered laughter and derisive subvocalized clicks. The Zorgax war leader in particular glowered at the upstart human with murderous red compound eyes. As the opening ceremony concluded and the gathered sapients dispersed to prepare their ships and equipment for the first round, few gave more than a passing thought to the small human contingent and their pitifully tiny fleet of converted freighters and repurposed asteroid miners. But Jake Wildcard Savage wore a confident grin as he gathered his team. "They may not have the flashiest ships or the most impressive weapons, but the HEF had some tricks up their sleeves. Humanity had spent the last decade honing some radically unorthodox strategies and scrounging up any advantage they could find. The galaxy may scoff at these primitives now," Savage mused, "but this unassuming little band of humans were accustomed to being underdogs. They knew how to scrap, to get creative, to use the low expectations of others to their benefit. No one thought they could make it this far, Not when they first left Earth's gravity well. Not when they struck out for the stars in their rickety ships. Not when they petitioned to join the Galactic Alliance. Yet here they were, standing shoulder to shoulder with the greatest spacefaring powers in the known universe. "Time to saddle up," Savage called out to his team. "Let's go show these tentacled bastards what a few squishy humans can do." With a chorus of oorahs, the HEF strode to their battered ships, ready to kick off this tournament with a bang. The galaxy may laugh at them now, but they won't be laughing for long. The human wild card. In the bustling hangar of Silos Prime, the human crew made their final preparations under the skeptical eyes of their alien competitors. Their small fleet looked positively primeval next to the sleek, advanced warships of the Zorgax Xidak and a dozen other spacefaring species. The HES flagship, the grungy jackalope, epitomized the ragtag human approach. Clearly a repurposed freighter, its hull bore scars from space debris and the patchwork repairs of 100 docking bays. Bolted-on turrets and decidedly non-standard modifications gave it a cobbled-together, inelegant look. But as Savage oversaw his crew's pre-combat checks and rallied their spirits, he knew that appearances could be deceiving. What their ships lacked in sophistication, they made up for with resourcefulness, tenacity, and more than a few secret weapons the galaxy had never seen before. "Commander, the Zexoth delegation is hailing us," called out comms officer Lou from her jury-rigged console. "They want to wish us good luck in the most condescending way possible." Savage chuckled. "Patch him through to my headset for a minute and keep the translator off. Time for a little psychological warfare, human style." The bridge crew exchanged knowing grins. They'd all seen the commander's pre-battle smack talk routines before. Poor aliens never knew what hit them. Savage fixed a shit-eating grin on his face as he flipped on his headset mic. "Hey there, Zeke Soth or whatever your name is. That's mighty kind of you to wish us dumb monkey boys good luck, but how about you shove that luck right up your squiggly-ass cloaca? We're gonna whoop you so hard, your broodmamas will molt in shame." A strangled squawk and some furious clicks came over the comm line before it abruptly cut out. The humans burst into laughter. "Gets him every time," Savage said smugly. "All right, people, time to get in the game. We're gonna hit these bastards so fast and so weird they won't know a proton torpedo from a glory hole." The HEF ships roared to life with throaty combustion, eliciting condescending titters from the more advanced aliens. In space, no one could hear the sputtering, but the other species had grown accustomed to the eerie silence of ion drives and inertialess thrusters. As the first rounds of competition began, the humans quickly proved they wouldn't be dispatched as easily as the aliens assumed. While their ships were slower and their tactics unrefined, they brought an element of pure chaos that threw the staid, traditional alien strategies for a loop. In a three-way skirmish against a Zotphorian void whale frigate and a Kiz gunboat, the jackalope baffled its foes by launching a salvo of crude dummy missiles packed with magnesium flares, sensor chafe, and old-fashioned glitter. While the aliens recalibrated scrambled sensors, the human ship darted into their blind spots to deliver disabling railgun shots with primitive kinetic shells. Human strike craft swarmed between the ponderous warships of the Galactic Alliance like sparrows harrying eagles. Drones cobbled together from scavenged astromech units buzzed in kamikaze runs, physical and electronic chaff fouling targeting systems. The crew of the Kizak dreadnought Zukurtz-Krixi found their computers overloaded with absurd demands to play tic-tac-toe, an oddly infectious rhythm the humans identified as Cuban Pete, and 3 zettabytes worth of cat holovids. But perhaps the greatest asset in the human arsenal was their sheer bloody-minded stubbornness. As the tournament wore on, and the challenges grew more grueling, many of the more civilized alien crews faltered in the face of fatigue or equipment malfunctions. But the humans just grit their teeth, rebuilt damaged components out of scrap, and quaffed truly alarming amounts of a foul black beverage they called coffee. Savage himself led a near-suicidal boarding action onto the Kia's flagship, Resplendent Quasar, after both ships had been crippled in a drawn-out slugging match. Clad in battered old pressure suits painted with leering shark mouths, the human Marines jetted through hard vacuum, with an antique combustion-powered Gatling gun as their only heavy weapon. Caught off guard by the brazen frontal assault, the Kia's naval master was in the process of ritually disemboweling himself in shame when Savage kicked in the door to the Resplendent Quasar's bridge. Pointing a rifle at the incredulous naval master, the human commander flashed a devil-may-care grin. "Wouldn't do that if I were you, boss. I hear entrails are a real bitch to clean out of the air filters." As the tournament wore on and upset after human upset dominated the Silos sportscasts, the name Wildcard Savage took on new meaning. Granted, sometimes the humans' wild gambles backfired spectacularly, like when a jury-rigged EMP device ended up knocking out the Jackalope's own systems right as they charged headlong at a Zorgax cruiser. But even as they limped away trailing atmosphere and pride, the humans always had another trick up their sleeves. The galaxy's pundits and bookies scrambled to make sense of the humans' improbable run to the quarter and semifinal rounds. They simply fight like they have nothing to lose. One flustered Sarth-K analyst sputtered into its facial tentacles. "We've never seen tactics like these before. It's barbaric." But even as the humans racked up wins through grit, creative engineering, and sheer audacity, the looming specter of the Zorgax Imperium and their 5-time champion warfleet cast a pall over the human celebration. There are only so many dirty tricks you can pull on a species that eats dirty tricks for breakfast, and the Zorgax looked hungry. "Tighten that ovipositor, Wildcard." Squadron Commander Drake growled after a rough firefight, left her strike craft missing 1/10 of their wings. "You got us this far with spit and baling wire, but it'll take more than moxie to dethrone the big bad Zorgax. Or do you happen to have an industrial replicator tucked into those rugged buns of yours?" Savage just flashed her a cocky grin and tweaked the end of his aquiline nose. "Don't you worry about my buns, missy. The Zorgax may eat dirty tricks for breakfast, but I have a few recipes for disaster those spiky bastards ain't never tasted before." Adaptability and unpredictability. As the tournament progressed, the Galactic War Games lived up to their name, challenging the contestants with grueling feats of martial prowess, tactical acumen, and sheer guts across a dizzying array of battlefields. From the airless, crater-pocked surface of a dead moon to the roiling acid storms of Giskrux Prime, warriors of 100 worlds clashed in an epic display of combat across the stars. But while the environments change, one constant swiftly emerge: the sheer bloody-minded unpredictability of the human fighters. In every scenario, against every foe, the HEF consistently defied expectations with tactics and strategies the galaxy had never seen. During an underwater chariot race through the methane seas of Xyloth, a squadron of sleek Kez and Sarth-K submersibles suddenly found themselves ambushed by a battered old human ore hauler that had been quietly rusting on the seafloor. As the Kez and Sarth-K traded fire, the human junker sub suddenly split open, disgorging a swarm of armored deep-sea divers. Whooping and hollering through their rebrothers, the humans slapped magnetic mines on the racers' hulls as they jetted past. In the chaos of the exploding chariots, the clunky human sub had vanished into the murky depths, leaving behind nothing but confusion and curses. In a grueling test of endurance across the Kazakh bonelands, a desolate desert where silicon-based organisms slowly petrified under the glare of a red giant sun, the humans did the unthinkable. They abandoned their vehicles altogether. While the other racers sped across the flats in environment-controlled hovercars, the humans struck out on foot, clad in improvised still suits cobbled together from life support systems. Braving searing heat, radiation, and the occasional pack of predatory sand wraiths, the humans hoofed it across the wastelands with grit, ingenuity, and more than a few good old-fashioned Terran hiking songs. They rolled into the finishing encampment, sunburnt and sand-scored, just as the Zorgax and Zephorian teams finally limped across the line, their hovercars choked with silicon dust. But perhaps nothing exemplified humanity's sheer audacity like the infamous bait and switch pulled during the void battle above Hermkex. The combined battle fleets of a dozen worlds had massed for a full-scale, no-holds-barred fleet action, the kind of grand capital ship battle romanticized in space operas galaxy-wide. But when the shooting started, the human warships didn't even engage. They just turned tail and fled, leaving their allies dumbfounded. The confusion only grew as the human warships led their pursuers on a merry chase through an uncharted shoal zone on the fringes of Hermkex's gravity well. With canny use of the planet's magnetosphere and some truly daring interstellar Obrini wave surfing, the humans managed to lure the Zorgax dreadnought and its battle-scarred Kizak and Kez escorts into the treacherous shoals. Suddenly, an entire hidden human fleet dropped out of Starskim on the far side of the planet, catching the combined Zorgax task force in a hammer and anvil pincer with the fleeing human bait ships. Trapped by the gravity well and the unexpected reinforcements, the Zorgax and their allies found themselves on the back foot, fighting for their lives as the humans swarmed them from all sides. The battle raged for a full Hermkex's rotation as the human fleet turned the planet's orbitals into a shooting gallery. Zorgax torpedoes dueled with improvised human weapons like the infamous fork-in-the-socket pulse mines and kit-bashed viral logic bombs that sent shivers through the Allied ship's source code. At one point, the humans even beamed over ancient Terran TV broadcasts to the Kazakh flagship's view screens, subjecting the insectoids to a demoralizing marathon of keeping up with the Kardashians. When the void finally cleared, the Zorgax dreadnought limped away trailing crystallized atmosphere and the blackened husks of its escort battlecruisers. The humans had not only survived the massive fleet engagement, but thrived, cementing their place in the tournament's final rounds to come. In the aftermath of the Hermkex's bait and switch, the galactic pundits struggled to make sense of the upset. Are the humans really so backwards that they've never heard of the Zorpian Gambit or Maneuver 67, Strist? One particularly flustered Zyphorian analyst gurgled into its facial jelly. Or are they some kind of four-dimensional chess savants operating on a level we can't even comprehend? Interlude. Other alien species start studying humans to try to figure them out. In the stands of the Xylos Coliseum and the strategic studies think globules of 100 worlds, a new trend emerged: humanology. The galaxy's finest minds turned the tools of science and sophistry on this strange new variable in the calculus of conquest. Behavioral scientists picked apart comm records and battle footage, trying to discern patterns in the apparently discordant antics of Wildcard Savage and his ilk. Biopsychosophical profilers sought answers in the strange neurochemical soup sloshing behind those beady simian eyes. Xenomathematicians extrapolated wildly from the limited datasets, speculating on the sociocultural pressures that could produce such an unorthodox mindset. But even the most brilliant minds in the galaxy couldn't quite wrap their lobes, tendrils, or grasping pedipalps around the human psyche. Their models crashed, their simulations devolved into chaotic noise, and their finely tuned predictive algorithms simply shrugged their ephemeral shoulders. One might as well try to mathematically model a tropical storm, or quantify the dreams of a Zarthian glass dolphin, lamented one Herimsian supercomputer, its blinking diodes drooping in existential despair. And yet, even as the established powers of the galactic scene grappled with this perplexing new player on the field, whispers spread through the tournament of discontent among the lesser spacefaring entities. In furtive data swaps and quantum-encrypted forums, minor species and protectorates grumbled that perhaps the humans weren't so strange after all. Perhaps they represented an alternate path to the stars, an average Joe approach more attainable than the grand military-industrial complexes of the Zorgax or Kez. After all, if a bunch of jacked-up primates from some backwater world could give the galaxy's finest a run for their credits through guts, gumption, and unconventional thinking, who's to say a scrappy Vizurm take hivehold, or a no-name NXNX birdplan couldn't pull off the same. By this point in the tournament, the humans had proven themselves more than just a novelty or a spot of comic relief. The expeditionary force and its willed cardways had inadvertently shown the galaxy that perhaps there was more than one way to fight amongst the stars. As the galactic war games entered its final rounds, with only the battle-hardened veterans still in the running, it seemed like the entire cosmos had fixed its myriad eyes, eye stalks, and photosensory organs on the HEF's unlikely heroes, not just for the sheer spectacle of their antics, but for the promise of what their victories might portend for the future of this little corner of the universe. The indomitable human spirit. As the galactic war games entered their final grueling rounds, the stakes rose higher than a Xylothian spineship's gravity bill. The cream of the galactic crop clashed in a series of ever more daunting challenges, each designed to push the contestants to their mental, physical, and technological breaking points. And none put the survivors through the ringer quite like the infamous Kizak Gauntlet. Devised by the galaxy's most sadistic game theorists, the gauntlet was billed as the ultimate test of a species' fitness to thrive in the cold, uncaring void. Part obstacle course, part wilderness survival challenge, and part psych evaluation from hell, the Kizak Gauntlet had been known to break hardened warriors, crush starship alloys, and even drive a few unstable AIs to teary-eyed rampancy. The task was deceptively simple: navigate from one end of a hazard-strewn space hulk to the other, using nothing but your wits, your weapons, and whatever you can scavenge along the way. But this was no mere abandoned wreck or asteroid base. The Kizak Gauntlet made its home in the carcass of a Zarthian world eater, a continent-sized bioship feared across the galaxy in aeons past. Within the world eater's guts, the Kizak had seeded a macabre garden of horrors. Gravity inversions, techno-organic beasts, and psychic anomalies that preyed on each species' darkest fears. The once mighty Zorgak squad tore each other to shreds after being subjected to a mind flayer's projected visions. The premier Kiaz assault team had to be forcibly extracted after half of them devolved into chittering madness while traversing a temporal inversion bubble. And now, only the human strike force remained. Commander Savage grimaced as his team assembled at the Gauntlet's gaping entry maw, a cavern of twisted metal and pulsing xenoflesh. They were bruised, battered, and down to their last few drums of caffeine pills, but the fire of determination still gleamed in their eyes. "I ain't gonna lie to you, folks," Savage growled. "This is gonna get uglier than a Harimzian's backside after Taco Tuesday, but you know what we're fighting for. Not just our lives, or the glory of dear old Terra. We're fighting to show these snaky bastards that you don't need 5 assholes and a quantum supercomputer to make it in this big bad galaxy of ours." The battered Marines and fighter jocks nodded solemnly, their mismatched pressure suits and jury-rigged weapons held together with little more than duct tape and desperate prayers. But they'd come this far on a wing and a prayer, and by God, they'd ride that contrail all the way to the top. As they plunged into the Gauntlet's neon-lit innards, the humans immediately found themselves beset on all sides. Screeching techno-organic monstrosities clawed at their faceplates, while localized gravity wells sent them tumbling in nauseous arcs. But the AGF had spent the last 2 years drilling in the most unforgiving environments humanity's twisted imagination could conceive, from the crushing depths of Europa's oceans to the scalding volcanic wastelands of Leo. They pushed forward, sealing breaches with space tape, and blasting back beasts with improvised shotgun shells packed with magnetized cutlery. But no amount of training or creativity could fully prepare them for the horrors the Kizak had devised. In a twisted gallery of flesh and force fields, the strike team found themselves confronted with nightmarish visions plucked from their own subconscious fears. Lieutenant Quan faced down a squadron of shrieking, accusing ghosts, the crewmates whose lives he'd traded for cold, hard necessity on a dozen battlefields. Corporal Vasquez wept as visions of her children starved and sickened, an inexorable toll exacted by the uncaring void. And Savage Savage found himself staring down the sum of all his doubts and fears, manifest in the mocking, superior grins of 1,000 imagined alien generals and admirals. Here, in the heart of the gauntlet, his every insecurity laid bare. He suddenly felt very small and very foolish indeed. Who was he kidding, thinking he could lead humanity to glory against the assembled might of the cosmos? He was just one man, a stubborn, thick-headed ape in a pressure suit, tilting at the windmills of a galaxy that had long since passed him by. As despair threatened to overwhelm the commander, a shout cut through the chorus of psychic horrors. "On your feet, Wildcard! Since when do you let these squidgy bastards into your head?" Savage looked up into the blazing eyes of Squadron Commander Jessica Drake. She was limping, her flight suit torn and stained with blood and hydraulic fluid, but her indomitable spirit burned bright as a supernova. "You can't seriously be buying what these overgrown crabcakes are selling," she snarled, gesturing at the mental phantasms with her scorched blaster rifle. "We've come too far and kicked too much alien ass to start believing their hype now." Drake reached down and roughly hauled Savage to his feet, her grip as unyielding as an asteroid's surface. "This is what they don't get, boss. What they'll never understand about us humans. We don't give up, and we don't back down, no matter how loud the universe screams in our faces that we're not good enough." All around them, the human strike team stirred, Drake's words kindling a fire in their battered bodies and weary souls. Slowly, painfully, they rise, clutching their weapons in white-knuckled grips as the nightmares flickered and recoiled. "We're the stubborn Sansaviches who clawed our way up from the caves and grasslands," Drake roared. "We're the crazy bastards who looked up at the stars and said, 'I'm gonna go there, and I'm gonna beat the ever-loving shit out of whatever I find.' We are human." Savage felt power and purpose surging through his veins like a shot of triple distilled espresso. He lifted his chin and stared down the phantasms wearing alien sneers, baring his teeth in defiance. "You're goddamned right we are," he growled. "Now let's show these tentacled turkeys what happens when you piss off a pack of evolved apes with rifles." As one, the humans roared their defiance, a sound that shook the twisted halls of the Kazakh gauntlet to its foundations. Blaster rifles barked, warped metal shrieked, and inhuman howls cut through the recycled air as the warriors of Earth went to war with minds and bodies as one. It was a battle that would echo through the annals of human history, a testament to the indomitable spirit of a species that refused to hear the word impossible. Through sheer grit, dogged determination, and the occasional application of duct tape in places duct tape was never meant to go, the battered survivors of the HEF strike team finally clawed their way to the finish line, the first and only champions of the Kazakh gauntlet. As they limped into the light of the Silos Coliseum, their pressure suits scared and scorched, 100 alien species erupted into riotous applause. The squishy little primates from Sol had done the impossible, and in so doing, etched their names in the stars for all time. There was still one last battle ahead, the overall championship against the Zorgax, but for this shining moment, the galaxy hailed the courage and tenacity of these indomitable human spirits. Savage and his strike team soaked in the adoration, even as a very small, very petty part of the commander's mind whispered that many of these snaky, bug-eyed bastards had been all too happy to write off his species not so long ago. But then Drake caught his eye and winked, a private moment that set his heart hammering in his chest. Whatever the championship brought, whatever trials and tribulations the galaxy drinked up to throw at them, he and his pack of crazy evolved apes would face it head-on, because that's just what humans do. The final showdown. The tension was thicker than a Harimzian's mucus trail as Tylos Coliseum prepared for the Galactic War Games Championship final. In one corner, the reigning champions, the battle-hardened berserkers of the Zorgax Imperium, their exoskeletons gleaming with the ichor of 1,000 conquered worlds. In the other corner, the battered but unbowed upstarts of the human expeditionary force, their ragtag warships still trailing shrapnel and sparks from their improbable run through the tournament. The Colosseum buzzed with 100 different languages and modes of communication, a gossipy melange of chirps, clicks, and pheromone signals as the assembled galaxy placed their bets. The odds were 10,000 to 1 against the humans, and that was being generous. After all, the Zorgax were the undisputed masters of strategic combat, with a legacy of conquest stretching back millennia. Their dreadnought, the Zikzker's Maw, was the size of a small moon, bristling with singularity cannons and swarms of biomechanical combat drones. In a stand-up fight, Commander Savage and his little flotilla of mothballed freighters and retrofitted garbage scows wouldn't stand a chance. Which, Savage reflected as he paced the Jackalop's cramped CIC, was exactly why he had no intention of fighting fair. "All right, people, gather round," he barked, the stress lines etched deep around his eyes. "I'm not gonna mince words here. The Zorgax are gonna come at us like an army of psychotic blenders, and our usual bag of tricks ain't gonna cut it. We need to get sneaky. And I mean Hiroshima Harry Truman in a tutu sneaky." Ideas. The assembled crew shifted uneasily, their faces a mix of fear, determination, and pre-battle jitters. For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of recycled air and the muted throb of the overclocked engines. Then Lieutenant Quan raised a hesitant hand. "What about a Trojan horse, her? We send over a boarding torpedo with some kind of nasty surprise inside. Get it right into the heart of their ship before they realize what's happening." Savage's eyes narrowed. "I like the way you think, Lieutenant, but we'd need one hell of a distraction to get that close. Something to really get their blood up. Piss them off so much they don't see the sucker punch coming." A slow, manic grin spread over Squadron Commander Drake's face. "I think I know just the thing, boss. Something that ticks off our psycho-arthropod friends like nothing else." Savage cocked an eyebrow. "Don't keep us in suspense, XO." Drake's grin turned positively feral. "Memes, sir. We spam their comms with the dankest, most obnoxious memes the human race has to offer. Flood their battlenet with shitposts until they're frothing with rage and too busy spurging out to notice the real attack." A ripple of laughter and disbelieving grins spread through the CIC. It was so crazy, so balls-out bugnuts insane. It just might work. Savage nodded, a matching wolf smile on his weathered face. "You heard the lady, people. Break out the papes, cue up the rickrolls. We're about to meme these motherfuckers back to the Stone Age." As the crew scrambled to prepare their mimetic arsenal and the Trojan torpedo, Savage keyed the ship's 1MC, his voice booming through every compartment and passageway. "Now hear this, now hear this. This is the old man speaking. In a few minutes we're gonna go out there and face the toughest, meanest, spickiest sons of bitches in this whole ass-backwards galaxy. They got the ships, they got the tech, and they've got the experience. But there's one thing they don't have, one thing they'll never understand." Savage paused, feeling the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders like a lead mantle. "They don't have our spirit, that crazy, stubborn, magnificent human spirit that doesn't know the meaning of the word quit. We've clawed our way up from the caves, hacked our way through the jungles, and blasted our way across the stars with nothing but guts, grit, and a big ol' side of fuck you. And that, my friends, is something no weapon can kill, no alien can conquer." He took a deep breath, feeling the fire kindling in his belly. "So when we get out there, when the fur starts flying, and it looks like all hope is lost, I want you to remember one thing. Remember that you're human. Remember that you come from a long, proud line of crazy hairless apes who never met a challenge they couldn't overcome, a foe they couldn't befriend, or a beer they couldn't shotgun." A rising chorus of cheers and oorahs echoed through the ship, a primal roar of humanity. Phew, yeah. Remember that. And there's not a force in this universe that can stop us. So let's get out there and show these tentacled turkeys what happens when you piss off a human. Cry havoc, and let's slip the memes of war. The Jackalope and her escorts roared out of Xylos Coliseum like ancient knights charging to a joust, fusion torches flaring as they hurled themselves at the Zorgax dreadnought with berserker fury. The championship had begun. At first, it seemed like the battle everyone expected. The Skeksuker's maw unleashed a fusillade of singularity torpedoes and graviton beams that tore through the human shields like tissue paper. Bioships swarmed the human formation like antibodies attacking a virus, disgorging waves of Zorgax killing machines onto the Jackalope's battered hull. The Coliseum crowd howled and shrieked as the first of the HEF ships crumpled under the onslaught, ancient titanium ripped asunder by eldritch energies. But then the memes hit, and all hell broke loose. Zorgax tactical displays foozed and flickered, suddenly awash in a deluge of strutting drakes and keyboard cat GIFs. Comms channels crackled with distorted clips of "Never Gonna Give You Up," the grinning visage of an ancient Terran music icon, shattering the dreadnought crew's concentration. On the bioship bridges, Zorgax battle conductors twitched and frothed as their mind screens flared with a riot of dickbuts and dogecoins. And in that moment of confusion, the Jackalope's ace in the hole slipped through the cracks. A single battered freighter, ignored in the chaos of the mimetic onslaught, slammed into the Skeksuker's maw's flank with calculated abandon. But there was no explosion, no blast of Terran defiance. For a heartbeat, the Zorgax merely tensed, waiting for the futile detonation. And then the laughter began. High and eerie, pattering and skittering and echoing through the dreadnought's pulsing halls, a sound that even the most jaded Zorgax veteran felt in their guts. The freighter's hull plates blew open, disgorging a wave of small, furry shapes into the maw's innards. Savage had always been fascinated by the ancient Egyptian tactic of unleashing cats onto the decks of enemy ships to spread confusion and terror. Now, he'd gone one better. As the tide of capering, cackling marmosets spread through the Zorgax dreadnought like a furry plague, everything descended into pure, unadulterated chaos. Zorgax warriors, brave in the face of any danger the galaxy had ever conceived, broke and ran before the onslaught of jabbering, poo-flinging primates. Damage control parties stumbled through clouds of blinding marmoset musk, firing wildly as the little beasts swung from cable conduits and scrambled over instrument panels. In the engine decks, a clan of hyper-caffeinated monkeys jacked into the coffee rations rerouted emergency power to the life support hydroponic gardens, flooding the bioship with pungent Scrollian slimeweed spores. And at the center of it all, a grizzled silverback gorilla in battle armor waded through the chaos, belting out Gilbert and Sullivan as he lobbed stun grenades with aplomb. By the time the Zorgax got their shit together and began purging the ship of its simian infestation, the damage had been done. With the dreadnought's shields and combat systems in disarray, the battered remains of the HEF fleet pressed their advantage, pounding the mighty warship with an arsenal of improvised weapons. Supercharged axe-body spray canisters burned through the bioship's chitinous hull like thermite. A boarding shuttle loaded with experimental strains of athlete's foot fungus was beamed directly into the maw's engineering spaces with horrific results. And in a final masterstroke, Savage had the Jackalope's fabbers print out 100,000 plastic lawn flamingos, each one stuffed with old-fashioned C4 and wrapped in a layer of duct tape, painted hot pink, and EETA Dick. The Flamingo Fiesta bombardment was the final coffin nail for the once mighty Zorgax dreadnought. Reeling from the mimetic onslaught, the primate blitzkrieg, and the sheer psychological trauma of witnessing a 30th-generation unspeakable class bioship shredded by pink plastic waterfowl, the Skeksuker's maw at last yielded the field, combat tendrils curling inward in the universally recognized gesture of fuquecade. This is noise, I am out. As the Zorgax juggernaut limped out of the combat zone trailing Ichor and traumatized marmosets, the Terran fleet sailed triumphant through the Silos Coliseum, the glittering shards of destroyed lawn flamingos trailing in their wake like mutant pixie dust. Savage slumped back in his crash couch, every muscle aching, every fiber of his being suffused with the bone-deep knowledge that once again he and his band of glorious lunatics had achieved the impossible. They had done what no one in the galaxy thought they could. They had brought the Zorgax Empire, the greatest military power in the known universe, to its many and various knees through sheer grit, audacity, and a fuckton of imported monkeys. Humanity had not just made its mark on the great stage of the cosmos. It had kicked down the doors, spiked the punch bowl, and danced a merry jig atop the smoking ruins of every alien's preconceived notions. As the bedraggled survivors of the HEF gathered in the Jackalopes CIC, they shared tearful embraces, hearty backslaps, and more than a few sloppy post-battle makeouts. They had been through hell together, and come out the other side stronger, wiser, and infinitely more prepared to deal with any hairy situation the universe threw at them. "I gotta hand it to you, Wildcard," Drake said, her grin threatening to split her face in half. "When you said we were gonna fight crazy with crazy, you weren't fucking around." Savage just shrugged, a twinkle in his eye. "What can I say? Sometimes you gotta embrace the madness. Keeps the bastards guessing." As the battered human fleet limped into Xylos Coliseum's Victory Bay, 1,000 alien species erupted into raucous applause, their cries of adulation seasoned with more than a little shell-shocked disbelief. It was a moment that would go down in galactic history, the ultimate underdog triumph, the stuff of legends and epic ballads, and at least one incredibly ill-advised full-immersion sim-stim. But for the men and women of the Human Expeditionary Force, it was just another day on the job, another impossible problem solved with a heaping helping of human ingenuity, raw guts, and weapons-grade moxie. As Savage and his crew strode down the Jackalopes landing ramp to bask in the adulations of a very confused galaxy, a single thought crystallized in the old warrior's mind, an absolute truth that would serve humanity well as they took their place among the stars. No matter what the universe threw at them, no matter how many tentacled, chitinous, or extra-dimensionally endowed foes stood in their way, Homo sapiens would always find a way to flip the script, kick reason to the curb, and unleash the kind of batshit, bug-eyed lunacy it could only originate in one place, a pale blue dot spinning through the cosmos, populated by a bunch of crazy hairless apes who never met a problem they couldn't solve with a little duct tape, a lot of heart, and a whole fuckton of humanity. Fuck yeah. Redefining the game. In the aftermath of the championship final, the galaxy struggled to come to terms with what they had just witnessed. The greatest military power in the known universe, humbled by a bunch of upstart primates with a seemingly endless bag of dirty tricks and psychological fuckery. It defied belief, spat in the face of 1,000 cycles of established military doctrine. And yet, the proof was right there, splashed across every holoscreen and datasphere from Xylos to the galactic rim. The mighty Zorgax, fleeing before a tide of insane monkeys and plastic waterfowl. The invincible Skeksakur's maw, brought low by dank memes and weaponized fungus. It was incomprehensible, inconceivable, absolutely fucking hilarious. As the initial shock wore off, a new emotion began to sweep through the assembled alien throngs, a strange, unfamiliar feeling that started as a tingle in the guts and built to a full-body quiver of delight. Schadenfreude, the perverse joy of watching the high and mighty brought low, of seeing the Imperium that had terrorized the galaxy for generations running like little chitinous bitches from a pack of poo-flinging primates. Soon, the Xylos Coliseum was echoing with a cacophony of alien laughter, a riotous harmony of clicks, whistles, and pheromone-soaked chortles, as 1,000 species reveled in the Zorgax's humiliation. Tentacles slapped against chitinous thighs, eye stalks wobbled with barely contained glee, and more than a few overcomes were sprayed across the arena as the gathered sentients howled their joy to the uncaring stars. And there, standing tall amidst the chaos, was the architect of the Imperium's downfall. Commander Jake Wildcard Savage, resplendent in his battered pressure armor, a shit-eating grin plastered across his simian face as he basked in the adulations of a griefful galaxy. Savage, Savage, Savage. The crowds chanted, their voices rising in a polyglottal crescendo of pure, unbridled hero worship. Clawed appendages reached out to touch the legendary human's armor, to snag a selfie or maybe just bask in the aura of sheer chutzpah radiating off him like Cherenkov shine. Please, please, you're too kind, Savage laughed, waving off the adoring masses with a gauntleted hand. But deep down, a part of him was relishing this moment, soaking in the vindication like a sponge in a tub of Venusian ambergris. After all the snubs, all the sneers and sidelong glances and muttered aspersions cast upon his species, to see the galaxy now, falling over themselves to lick humanity's boots, was sweeter than a mug of Callisto cane moonshine. But as the HEF made their way through the cheering crowds toward the championship days, a single discordant note soured the harmony of human triumph. The lone figure standing tall and erect among the hunched and cowering throngs, glaring at Savage with compound eyes that smoldered like the pits of hell. Admiral Skithrax, supreme battle conductor of the Zorgax Imperium. Savage met the alien's gaze without flinching, his shit-eating grin ratcheting up to Cheshire Cat levels. Admiral Skithrax, fancy meeting you here. Come to congratulate us on a battle well fought. The Zorgax chittered, a sound like 1,000 crickets being fed into an industrial meat grinder. You upstart simians, you dare to make a mockery of this most hallowed tradition, to sully the sacred rites of combat with your juvenile antics and underhanded trickery. Savage just shrugged, the picture of nonchalance. Don't hate the player, hate the game. Not our fault you overgrown roaches couldn't adapt to a little creative problem-solving. Creative pyrobilium solovieng. Skithrax shrieked, ichor spraying from his mandibles. You unleashed a plague of vermin upon this Gexker's maw. You bombarded us with images of a flightless Terran waterfowl, replicating and mutating beyond all control. You befouled our mind screens with the lowest form of sapient communication since the dawn of reason. None of this is in the Codex VULCANUS. Ha. Really? Savage mused, rubbing his chin. Guess the Codex needs an update. New galaxy, new rules. Rochi. The Zorgax admiral seemed to swell with incandescent rage, his carapace straining at the seams. You dare to lecture me on the rules of warfare. The Zorgax have been conquering worlds since your filthy species was still flinging excrement at each other in the trees. Savage just grinned, a smug, infuriating expression that seemed custom-designed to drive the alien into an apoplectic fit. And look where that got you. Beaten by a bunch of monkeys with moxie. Face it, Admiral, you're not the biggest swinging dicks in the galaxy anymore. It's time for some new management, and I think humanity's resume speaks for itself. With an inarticulate shriek of rage, Admiral Skithrax lunged at Savage, serrated forelimbs extended to rip and tear. But before he could close the distance, a blue-white stun bolt caught him square in the thorax, sending the mighty Zorgax warrior crumpling to the deck in a twitching heap. Squadron Commander Drake lowered her sidearm, the faint wisps of ionized air curling from the barrel. Man, I have been wanting to do that all fucking day, she drawled. Savage just chuckled, stepping over the spasming Zorgax to plant a kiss on his XO's grime-streaked cheek. Have I told you lately that I love you, woman? Not where anyone could hear, you sentimental old fart. Drake grinned, returning the kiss with compound interest. As the human commanders made their way to the winner's podium, a hush fell over the Colosseum, a breathless anticipation thick enough to catch in a Roxelvet's sphericals. Every sapient being in the galaxy seemed to hold its breath as Savage mounted the dais, his battle-worn armor glinting under the Tylos sun. The master of ceremonies, a gelatinous root Nor that had been quivering with poorly concealed nerves throughout the ceremony, burbled obsequiously as it extended a shimmering pseudopod to the human commander. And now, it is my greatest pleasure to present the Galactic Martial Champion's crest to the species who, against all odds and established precedent, has proven itself the most formidable military force in the known galaxy. I give you Commander Jake Savage of the Human Expeditionary Force. The Colosseum erupted in a maelstrom of applause and raucous cheering as Savage accepted the shimmering platinum crest, the ultimate symbol of martial superiority in the cosmos. The human held it aloft, his battered gauntlet glinting in the alien sunlight, and the crowd went absolutely apeshit. "Thank you, thank you," Savage called out, his voice booming over the din. "It's an honor to accept this award on behalf of the brave men and women of the HEF and of humanity as a whole. We came to this tournament as underdogs, as the laughing stock of the galaxy. But we proved, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that when you fuck with the human race, you dbstnot. Another explosion of cheers, the sound rattling the very foundations of the arena. Savage basked in the adulation for a moment before raising a hand for quiet. "But more than that," he continued, his voice taking on a somber note, "I want this victory to send a message to every sapient being in the cosmos. A message that says, no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, you have the power to defy the odds, to flip the script, kick reason to the curb, and forge your own destiny among the stars." He thrust the crest high overhead, the platinum glinting like a newborn sun. "The galaxy is changing, my friends. The old ways, the old powers that have held sway for millennia. Their time is done. It's a new age, an age where every sentient being, from the mightiest Zorgax to the lowliest Horgmlot, has the chance to stand tall and proud and seize their mother few kicking by birthright." The crowd was in a frenzy now, a seething mass of writhing appendages and pheromone-soaked exultation. Savage drank it in, feeling the power of his words washing over him like a tsunami of pure, uncut humanity. Fukia. "So let this be a warning and a promise," he roared, his voice thundering across the Colosseum like the wrath of an angry god. "To every tyrant and despot, every slaver and warmonger that dares cast their shadow across the stars, your days are nabmembiarid, because you've just seen what happens when humanity gets a bug up its collective ass. Now imagine a galaxy of like-minded hard chargers, all ready to kick the door in and flip the script on your candy asses." Savage thrust out a gauntleted fist, his eyes blazing with the fire of 1,000 suns. "Things will never be the same. So busikevil the few kike up, because it's gonna be a long, strange trip." The Colosseum erupted in a final crescendo of pandemonium, a wall of sound and fury that seemed to shake the very pillars of heaven. Savage stood at the center of it all, resplendent in his dented armor and shit-eating grin, the proud champion of a species that had just kicked the galaxy square in the down-belows. It was a moment that would live forever in the annals of history, a turning point in the story of the cosmos. The day that humanity, in all its batshit bug-eyed glory, had stormed onto the galactic stage and proceeded to flip the whole fucking script. And as Commander Jake Wildcard Savage basked in the adulation of a shell-shocked universe, a single thought crystallized in his mind, an inescapable truth that would echo through the ages. The galaxy would never be the same. Because from this day forward, there was a new player at the table, a wild card in the great game of the cosmos. And that player's name was humanity.